देर में इंशाल्लाह आ जाएंगे, वो थोड़ी सी सेटिंग अप कर रहे हैं। ठीक है, तब तक में आप लोगों को थोड़ा सा वेट करना होगा, 2-3 मिनट, इंशाल्लाह वो अभी इन हो जाएंगे। उसके अलावा मीटिंग कौन मैनेज कर रहा है? नरेंद्र नहीं,
विशाल 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 जी जी जी। Hello everyone, I am Vishal Kumar. I will be hosting you guys. So first of all, I welcome you all in this session. So for further, I would like to invite Sir Abdul Rafique for this today's webinar about privacy versus security. And yes, one more thing. I also want to mention that a recorded version of this webinar will be available in case if you are disconnected. We would love to hear from you. Any questions if you have, you can ask freely in the chat box. Sir, you can start. So without wasting time, I would like to invite Sir Adnan Rafique for today's webinar.
But how, where's the criteria? Because this is all paperwork. They're not even putting that information in the computer, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But how that person in the shop taking a copy and they do not put this information in the computer from that, for example, in this case, Telenor, for example, and keeping the record and issuing a SIM, does it concern you or not? I mean, because they have everything they need from you, and you could be living there and, right, okay. So that's a good answer, biometric system. But when they, help me understand, when you're saying biometric system, so they take your thumb impression on that shop, they do ask you to, okay. Now it means that data is going to be stored somewhere in their backend system. Now, when they collect this information, with this information, how do they store the data? Okay, so yes, database, somebody written this database. So now what happens when they're doing this thing in the database, and this is where we'll have some more conversation, which you guys are part of engineering. Now, the privacy information then has to follow a framework, which you may not have heard of it, but if you did, it's good, but I do not expect you to know the framework already. But there are frameworks. Data privacy frameworks are internationally followed by 3 or 4 very known, which is one is ISO 27001, which is more of a control. I will tell you a little bit more. And ISO 27002, which is more of a policy. I told you earlier, personal identification information, which goes towards HIPAA, which is related to Health Protection Act. One is HIDRA. So there are like 5, 6 very brand known framework available. And you have to comply with that. Yes, exactly. That's what I'm coming. Why this fraud happens, and that's why relating to privacy. So, so before I go to framework, let me address this fraud happens in CNIC. So now you're saying you do the thumb impression. So let's assume, so there are 2 scenarios then, right? So if that shop person or shop person, whatever, when you're, so first thing that he or she is not, so once you have all digital system, thumb impression, compressed system, then that person is not supposed to have any paper-based copy, regardless, not any cost. Because at this time, you own the data, you are the owner, but your custodian for the data is that telephone service provider or cell phone service provider. Now they store the data and they are processing, or somebody else may be processing. They might be having that data shared with any other IT service company. Because you don't know, once data is gone in their database, giving you the biometric scans it and it digitizes the data and it's there in the data. Now, the data is in the database, so how do they make sure database or the company follows a framework to protect your personal identification system, and which is, as somebody said, it's got hacked or breaches happens, because now we're talking about privacy and how do you secure the data. First thing first, they say, okay, we need your first name, last name, your home address, maybe your CNIC number, because then we have to share with the government and we have to comply with the government rules. Okay. Now, nothing you can say about it because it's from the government and it's mandatory. Now, how do we secure it? So, securing is like your username and password. If you enter your house, you need a key to unlock it. You log into your computer, you need a password to unlock it. Right? Same thing with the database. What controls do you have to secure or provide a security to protect your data, which is your private data? Now you give everything through that CNIC number. Now they know everything about you, but it's their responsibility that they have to make sure your data is secured And if not, any breaches happen, I'm sure they do not get any fines. Like in AWS breaches, I saw some clinical records, 14 million records were hacked. So these companies, if they do not comply, they get fined by the government. Like in Europe, we have very known regulation called GDPR. US, we have other form of framework, and in California, we have CCPA, which is kind of similar to GDPR. It means right to, there are 3 clauses, one of them right to be forgotten. Means you can go back and you can say, hey, Telenor, okay, now I have a very good example. Let's say after 2 years, you switch your cell phone provider from Telenor to Zong. What's the process if you switch your provider to a new provider? By law, I'm not sure about Pakistan, but by these laws, GDPR and other laws, you are supposed to go back to those previous provider, or you can go back and, hey, can you delete my data? I'm not your subscriber anymore, and I have the right that you should not be keeping my data. So this is an official statement. You can send them email. Email works officially here. So these things and practices are being followed. So if any breaches happen sometime in the future and your data happens to be compromised, these companies get sued millions and millions of dollars. So this is what we talk about data privacy, your personal identification information, whether it's hospital, cell phone provider, whichever. Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised you just call the number. It means they're sharing the data in the back end. Now, who owns that? Here, it doesn't work this way. I use T-Mobile. We have AT&T. We have Verizon. 3 large providers. By no means they can share the data. No way. So if I have to switch it, I'll go to a new company and have to start from zero, give them all information, not just like that. I've seen it. I'm coming to the example for the banking system. I've been doing some banking and trying to understand the banking system. I was surprised that if I go to my Amazon Bank app, if I have to send you money, you give me account number, I just put your account number, boom. I select the bank and that's it, your name is popped up. I was literally surprised that one bank's database is being shared by another. I can just go, I'm not even putting your number, your name. I select HBL and I put those 14 character or 16 digits and your account comes up. It means they're sharing that limited information, not too much, but again, so it looks like they are there for the convenience, but again, how they are making sure these things are kept private, following by any framework. If any framework exists there, who does that? You should be following maybe in European or Asia Pacific framework, or maybe GDPR is European, in that region, because every region is different. And in Pakistan, usually people follow European standards. And I believe, and GDPR is very strict. Now I'm coming to the next connecting topic. Give me a second. So now, if a company is not compliant, so first you have to follow a framework regardless. You can pick one framework and it has to come from the government. Government has to work on that, agree on a framework. It has to enforce. Now, enforcing of the first of law is very problematic in Pakistan. We have so many laws, but they do not get enforced. So the only best way to enforce is, apologize my language, this is tanda. Okay. Like you get a fine from the police for 500 rupees, you would be like, okay, I don't care. But if you're using a cell phone in the car and for the same rule you break, and if you get 5,000 rupees fine, right, then you will not use your cell phone. And on top of that, if your license gets cancelled after 2 incidents, you will never use your cell phone. And this is what happens here. We get 4 points. And we have like 8 or 12, and then, I'm just talking about the law enforcement. How do you enforce it? Nothing to do with privacy. Same thing in GDPR. If the breach happens, a company has to notify or disclose the breach to the customer or the user, depending, that, hey, we have a breach within 72 hours. And also they get fined, I believe, some in millions of dollars, which I don't remember on top of my head, but the very heavy penalty for that, millions of dollars. So they should invest this much money in IT controls to secure your data. So I'm going to talk about, let's say, some of the security stuff. How do you protect? Like, I think so by now you have good enough information, your data privacy or kind of baseline. This data is not supposed to be shared, your medical records, your license information, all these things. And if you share with the company this data, then if you switch your subscriber or whatever, there has to be a clause, or if you go to GDPR, if a right to be forgotten or right to be erased, something, they use it. And as an individual user, you have the right to request and have them deleted. Okay, one more example I can give you. I don't have, let's say, let me put on my website. I'm just going to Telenor. I want to check something here. I'm from US. I'm going to Telenor. Okay, hold on. Telenor, Pakistan. And see, I just want to prove something here. It's still coming. It's taking forever. Wow, damn slow. Let me take an example for so I'm on this Telenor website, and one thing I want you to test and notice yourself, is the cookies. Do you know what cookies are? Do you accept the cookies when you go to a website? Anyone? Yeah, listening? Yeah, I'm not talking about Peak Friends cookies or those cookies you find at the bakeries. No, unless it forces to. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, those cookie Peak Friends, not the Peak Friends ones. So if you visit a website in US, maybe you go to Calvin Klein or Macy's or Best Buy, it will ask me to accept those cookies, and I have the option to deny those. But unfortunately, I have not seen even that pop up. By law, they're supposed to, because maybe not be the law in Pakistan, that's why. But in every country website, which is UK or Europe or US, they have to show the pop-up. What does it mean is that the company or the website is saying, we are collecting your information. What that cookie is collecting your email address, is collecting your IP address. It may even collect your information. Let's say if you put something, your name, address, and all these things in a web form. So it's a browser is collecting all the information, and there are two types of cookies. One is, I think, can be deleted immediately when you close the browser. One is persistent, which can be in your browser for up to 1 or 2 years. So this is how far they go. And this is how they collect information. This is how they know your behavior. So these cookies concept existed for so many years. Now, if you look at these cookies, then they collect the information and they sell it. So first thing, they have to mandatory show that they are showing you that allow cookies or not. That's the must have here, especially since a year or 2 years ago, since the GDPR got enforced. This is a must have. Now, if you deny the cookies, that's fine. Some of the feature may work, may not, but you have an option. Hey, I do not want to disclose my information. I do not want to share my information when I'm visiting your website, because this is how they collect it and do it. And I do so many applications. I review these applications whenever I'm working with Facebook or Google, Adobe, all these products with these companies. And this is concern. And then I speak to data protection officers and tell them, hey, we integrate this product with our company. They might be collecting it. How do we do that, right? So we have our front end website. In the back end, they are collecting it. So we get responsible because they hit our website. But in the back end, we're using analytics from Google, or we are using analytics from Adobe. So you have to let your customer know. And then there's a privacy policy link on each and every European American website. This, by law, they tell you what is being collected, what do they do with this data? Do they really sell it? So you will be shocked, you will be surprised when you go and read everything is like this, it's just there, So these things has to be in practice, and this is evolving very fast. And in fact, since the topics there, ISACA has certification, I'm certified privacy engineer for that. I did some security credentials from ISACA. I'm pretty active on those forums, and I speak on this topic, especially since the cloud. So that's one piece of it. They collect the information, your private information and everything. Now I'll switch gear a bit, gear a little towards for the next 10-15 minutes, and I'll give you some time for question. Now I'll talk about security. Security is very different today. And since all you guys are university and colleges, I don't know how many of them are in bachelor's and master's, but believe me, if you really want a good career, get into cloud. I always say that. I'm surprised still Pakistan has data center concept. And the reason to that, I believe the major players are not investing in cloud. There are no data center. Or maybe they can use, like for commercial businesses, you don't need a data center in Pakistan. Let me put this way. And there are, like say maybe in hospital, like I know one hospital in Karachi, Jinnah Hospital, right? For example, they, by law, they may not see, this is where the laws come. These people are, okay, we have all these laws and we cannot put our customer data or patient's data outside Pakistan, which makes sense. Then it's time to make some laws, it's time to bring AWS or Microsoft data center in Pakistan and do this way, like Germany is doing it, same way. They don't use other, in German, very strict, so I don't want to go into the details, but this is where the Azure, AWS regions and all these things come into the picture. But I was going to say security, right? So how funny is that most of the websites in Pakistan are not even hosted in Pakistan? You don't know, right? They may be hosted most probably in US servers. So right there, you go and shop online, you go and place an order for a food, you go and place and order something in an app. That is probably somewhere hosted in the US, most probably. So your data residency is really out of the picture. You're being a Pakistani citizen, but your data is somewhere in the cloud. So that's the privacy. Now security. So now there are some situations you say, I don't care, my business, and I just need my business to be fast because my market is US and my customer is US. Legit, absolutely makes sense. Then there's no reason you need to be concerned about that. Now, how do we secure the data? This is where we talk about controls. And then feel free to ask me a question, but the control, what I'm talking about here, how do we secure the data in transit, which means TLS encryption we use? How do we secure the data at rest in data center, which is data at rest? We use AES 256 with encryption. Data in transit, data at rest. What are the controls we have on the network perimeter, like firewall, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, what controls we have in API and the apps when we write the code. How do we make sure the code is secure code? How do we make sure encryption keys are there and exchanged securely? So this is kind of controls are there, and this is what you need to apply. However, even these controls are sometimes failed because end of the day it's all about an individual, how he or she is responsible. There are two types of individuals. One of them could be the one which is system or data custodian, which they host the data, so the IT team. One is end user. So let's talk about end user. So if you use your email, your corporate email, if you use it, and your corporate email, let's say in Microsoft platform, Office 365, now that by design is secured in the cloud, in encryption in transit and encryption at rest, they do have it. However, when you log in with your username and password, it's your responsibility. How strong is your password? Because now this is an application layer. When you go and log in, and it's a readable format. Underlying data is stored, is still secure. Somebody steal the hard drive, they will not be able to steal it because all encrypted. But on the application, you are provided with the controls, but if you keep a weak password, if you do not make the password is strong, it's going to get leaked, right? In the dark web, whatever, maybe you use non-commercial or other product which is non-paid. So it becomes your responsibility to make sure you make the proper use of that data or security control. And this happens a lot. And that's why in order to make this control more secure, we talk about additional control like MFA and all that. So I'm giving all these industry-based examples. I did not go in this conversation about the typical terminologies, let's say there's a CIA, triad, confidentiality, availability, integrity, and all that. This is, in the back end, this is how it works. But in a real world, how these things work, that's the point I'm trying to make and make you understand the real usage of these tools and technologies available. So this is very important. When you use multi-factor authentication, you have to have those controls. You use firewall, so how you have to make sure, but this concept of firewall, when you go to the cloud, totally become changed. So these are the number of new security controls available in the cloud. And there are so many benefits of using cloud because in cloud, we leverage AI and machine learning, for example, and the data on the cloud capabilities, there are billions of signals. I give you one very basic example. If you're managing a firewall in your company, if you're managing a firewall at your office, even at university, maybe most probably it will be a Palo Alto firewall or most probably a Cisco firewall. This is in your data center, and that firewall is protecting, and that firewall gets update for firmware, whatever, on an occasionally basis. But as soon as you're in the cloud, you learn the capability of cloud, which is in and there are also some technologies called reverse proxy, web application firewalls. They detect those threats in real time, collecting the signals from so many security providers, which is Microsoft, Proofpoint, Cisco, Palo Alto. They participate and share the data in the cloud. And this is where you get the more matured or more up-to-date and more accurate in some sense to collect those data. And this is how the security works. And then we have the whole framework on security. Like for the website, we follow the OWASP OWASP methodology. We follow in security MITRE framework, which is from MIT, very well-known framework, very in-depth, and you can see the lateral movement, how the attack is happening, if the attacker is going laterally on more than one computer on your network. It's a whole framework which is used when it comes to cybersecurity. They also are from Lockheed Martin, but MITRE is more commonly used than Lockheed Martin security framework. Then we have CERT, we have CISA, all these things. So these are the things, right? So this is how you have to understand the privacy and the security. They are not same. Privacy has to be very limited. Hey, you need my number, everything. Why do you need it? What's the business case? I deal with this every day, believe me, with so many vendors I work with, so many security solutions, an architect, and if they don't need it, do not allow, do not approve, don't give them. And if their business justification, hey, we need this data, then the security conversation happens. Hey, okay, now we allow you to collect this information for this medical record. You're going to be opening a new facility, a new hospital. You're collecting information for these patients. How are you going to store it? Do you have data? Okay, now. And then security is not limited there. When you back it up, there are regulations how long you will retain the data, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. There are regulations from government also where you need more than 10 years. Some of them, even federal government even goes more than that. But typically 1 to 5 years is very common. Financial industry, I believe you need 3 years of 7 years, like a stock exchange and all that. Of course, that's not common in Pakistan. Of course, maybe stock exchange, I don't know. But here, so many hedge funds, financial companies, private equities, they have to follow their FINRA, which is called FINRA, financial regulation they have, and they have to retain the data. So some investigation happens, or if they get subpoena request from the government to come and inspect and do the investigation, you're supposed to provide the data. If you don't, then you're liable and you will be sued or you will be charged. So that's why these information governance has to establish first, then everything comes under. And then security, cyber security comes in. We talk a lot about Pakistan or cyber security and blah, blah, blah. Okay, what framework do you follow, or why at very first place the data is there, which is not supposed to be there? Why did it even from the day first, right? So these things has to go, these things needs to discuss, these things needs to, it's a new area, it's evolving, especially with data privacy and internet and cloud these days. Not maybe 10 years ago, but especially after the cloud, because now the data does not remain behind the firewalls. It does not remain behind your real estate, which is your data center is your real estate, right? It's in the cloud. So how do you make sure? Of course, we make sure the data is secure in the cloud. The best way to is encryption by default. And this is where it has to be. This is how you secure it. You then improve your different layer by adding a layer like identity and access management. You're talking about network layer, application layer, in transit, and all these things. I hope this makes sense, right? I'll be pausing and then asking you or giving the time to ask any question. But again, if you wanted to find about myself, I'll put my blog, Exchange IT Pro. And if you go to About Me section, you'll find About Me. It's not updated yet. I've been Microsoft MVP for 2 years for Microsoft Cloud Office 365. As I said, and also I do a lot of mentorship where this is a big session, but again, that's more of a career related where I can help and coach the students or those getting the market. Hey, what right skill set, what should be your strategy getting into that, because in today's world, you don't need 20 years to where you have to be. Technology and everything is so fast, so you can really speed up and grow fast in your career if you have the right direction. Let's say the GPS. 20 years ago, we did not have GPS. We used to ask, okay, Shakur Panwale ki gali mein chotha ghar, ab aisa nahi hai, right? Now we have GPS. Same thing happens in the career. It's changed. So this is where the mentorship comes. You have somebody, you can even find a mentor in your company, in your university, college, from the field. And you don't have to go and ask, hey, can you mentor me? This is not the way. But you have to ask some legitimate, meaningful questions. Start building your relationship. And then people from the industry is always a good one to hang out and network with them. because they are the one, they know, how these things what you study in university and college get implemented in the market. And that would be the process. And you should be doing from the day first in university college. So by the end of 4 years, when you're graduating, you should have good enough connections in the market. Not necessarily get you the job, but it always helps to socialize. And you never know, a friend of friend of friend may have a job or may have something to offer. So always do that. Yeah, so, and also my 2 articles got published in Microsoft. One was on career in cloud computing, which was back in 2016. And lately, last year, I published an article about the best practices to work from home using Microsoft technologies. That was there on another Microsoft TechNet. And I've written many scripts, which have more than 5,000 or 7,000 downloads on TechNet. So I've been doing this for pretty much 15, 16 years. I used to run groups in Dubai also. So just kind of give you an idea. This is not something new. I've been doing for a very, very long time, and that's my passion, and I like sharing knowledge. So board or this thing is open now. Anyone has any question, feel free to ask. It's your time now. If you're quiet, no question, I think then it was a very boring session. So you're gonna rate me 1 to 5. 5 is good, 1 is boring. So let me know how boring it was. 1 or 2. Because I do not expect 5.
It was amazing, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys have to participate, आप लोग participate करें. Ask any question. कोई भी question हो, कोई question गलत नहीं होता. Even at this time in my industry, I ask this question because this is the best.
I would like to thank Sir Adnan Rafique for this great webinar talking about the security and privacy. And I also want to thank all of you for playing your part in this webinar. Hope to meet you all again. Till that, thank you and stay safe.